Today we're going to unpack a really profound idea that comes from just 2 verses of text, and it gets at a powerful question. What happens when our own words completely fail us? How do our deepest feelings actually get communicated?
You know that feeling, right? Those moments of just immense joy or deep, deep grief or maybe sheer exhaustion where language, it just isn't enough. It can't capture what's really going on inside. Well, that very human struggle is exactly where this text begins.
And what's interesting is that the source text doesn't try to sugarcoat this. In fact, it gives this limitation a name: weakness. Now, it's not talking about a character flaw, but about a basic, fundamental part of being human, that struggle to communicate what lies way beyond our vocabulary.
Okay, so here's the first piece of the puzzle. The text just comes right out and says it. Sometimes we're so lost, we don't even know what to ask for. It's not presented as a failure on our part, but as a known problem, this weakness, which then, of course, sets the stage for a solution.
Right, so the really crucial thing to get here is that this isn't about being bad at praying or, being a poor speaker. It's about a limit that's just baked into our language. We feel things so deeply that our structured, logical system of words, it just can't hold the full meaning.
All right, so we've got the problem on the table, our built-in weakness when it comes to communication. So now the text introduces the solution. It puts forward this idea of an advocate, a helper who steps in right at that point where we falter.
Now, just so we're all on the same page for this explainer, when the text says the Spirit, it's talking about a divine entity that acts as a go-between. You can almost think of it as a perfect translator or an advocate, someone who bridges that gap we were just talking about, the one between what we can say and what we truly mean.
And this is not a passive thing at all. The idea here is one of active intervention. It's like the very second we hit that wall, the moment our words fail and all we have left is this raw feeling, that's when this helper is said to step in and take over for us.
Okay, and this is where things get really fascinating. If this helper is communicating for us, what language is it using? Well, the text gives a very poetic, very abstract answer.
Wordless groans. I mean, wow, that's the key phrase right there. This suggests a type of communication that's pre-verbal, something much deeper than language. So we're not talking about just finding better words, we're talking about conveying the raw, unfiltered emotion that exists underneath them all.
I love how this lays out the contrast. On one hand, you've got our attempts at communication. They're logical, they're structured, but they're always limited by the words we know. And then on the other side, you have what the Spirit conveys, the deep, emotional, profound reality of our heart, something that words just can't fully capture.
So, that word intercedes that the text uses. What does that actually mean? Well, it's pretty simple, really. It just means to step in and act on someone's behalf. So in this context, the Spirit is basically acting as a perfect translator, taking our messy, inexpressible feelings and turning them into a message that is perfectly understood.
Okay, let's recap. We have our problem, wordlessness. We have a helper, the Spirit. And we have the method, these wordless groans. But that brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. How is this message received? Who's decoding it?
And bam, here's the second verse that just ties it all together. It says that God, who is described here as the one who searches our hearts, gets the message perfectly. There's just no room for error, no misinterpretation, because the communication is coming directly from the Spirit, which is already aligned with the divine will. This just lays out the whole process perfectly, doesn't it? Let's walk through it. It starts with us, with our human limitation. Then the Spirit steps in, translating that need. After that, God understands the message directly. And finally, that whole communication is perfectly aligned. It's this complete, closed-loop system for when our own systems just break down.
So, why does any of this matter? What's the big takeaway? Well, for anyone who holds to this theological framework, this little 2-verse idea is huge. It really speaks to that core anxiety of not being good enough, even in our prayers.
Really, it all comes down to a sense of assurance and profound comfort. It means that even in your most broken, most incoherent moments, you are being perfectly understood. It suggests your deepest intentions are heard loud and clear, even when you can't voice them yourself. The whole idea is that you don't have to get the words right, because a perfect advocate is speaking for you.
And that just leaves us with one last big idea to chew on. If you step back from the theology for a second, this text touches on something truly universal. If our most profound emotions, our deepest pains, and our greatest joys are ultimately wordless, what does that really tell us about the beautiful but incredibly limited tool we call language?